passion, so much starts with that. Don't tell me that you've ever encountered anybody with more passion for their job than Ric Flair. Woo! I mean, this brother, you know, I mean, he was something special. I mean, listen, this man is just next level.
Oh, what's your story? Don't you dare be sour. Clap for Stephanie and feel the power.
Welcome to What's Your Story with Steph McMahon, a WWE and Fanatics original production. So thank you so much, Steven, for doing this pod, and thank you guys for being here. Have you been here all day?
Yes.
Has it been amazing? Yeah, just incredible. Listening to Trick Williams music all day, I mean, I know that's all I heard. But to start things off, Steven, you like to play a character on General Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brick.
Brick.
Surveillance expert for the mob, you know? I mean, they even allowed me to kill a couple of people.
I've seen
It's kind of fly.
You shot a nurse, or she pretended to be a
well,
nurse.
she was an assassin.
She was gonna, yeah.
She had to get taken out. She was
Yeah.
gonna try to mess with my boss. I had to take her out.
And your gun was very impressive.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it was.
It
was a
was,
lot. It was
you
a lot
know.
bigger than her
They
gun.
give-
I'm just saying.
It was. But I didn't miss.
But that's right. You didn't miss.
That's right.
She never even got a shot off.
Not at all.
No. But the
Not at all. Took
rumor
out.
is that you might be doing a shirtless.
Yeah,
scene?
they want me to either shirtless or tank top, one or the other. You'll have to tune in to wait and see.
All right.
But I've been getting myself in shape, working out, taking better care of my health. So
All right.
if this was years ago, there's no way in hell they could have pulled that off. I was skinny with a pot belly. It doesn't get nastier than that. And then you could be big, you could be small, but to be skinny with a pot belly,
Skinny fat. That's
as
what
a
we call
dude,
it.
a skinny
Yeah.
fat, that's just nasty.
Yeah.
So I definitely wouldn't have done it years ago, but that's not me now.
But so can you talk a little bit about your health journey,
Yeah.
right? Because you had a really big scare.
Yeah.
During COVID,
Yeah.
from COVID.
Yeah.
And how did you get from that place to here you are going shirtless, in General Hospital?
I got to tell you, I got a lot of people to thank for it. I mean, COVID affected different people different ways. It almost killed me. You know, I was in the emergency room 4 times. They told me on New Year's Eve, 90 minutes before the ball dropped, heading into 2022, that if this steroid and antibiotic didn't work, that they were going to have to call my family. Because they was like, it was really, really bad. I had double pneumonia. It was bad. It
bad.
just was. And once I overcame that, I saw Dana White for the UFC, who I'd always known looked a bit husky and out of shape. And the next thing I know, I see him online, and he's got a 6-pack.
Shredded.
And he's shredded and in shape. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I called him because he's a friend, and I said, what's that about? And he said, hold on. And put me on FaceTime and connected me with Gary Brecker
Right there.
for 10X Health. At the time, he's now the brand The Ultimate Human, and he does all of that. And Dana White said, this is my guy. He's been through a lot. He said, get him right. Help him out, whatever it takes. And Gary told me, give me 3 months, and I'll change your life.
Is that all it took?
And so he said, came, took my blood work, identified what my problems were. My cholesterol level was like at about 302. I was 0.1 point away from being a full-blown diabetic that was going to have to be on diabetic medication for the rest of my life.
Wow.
He said mitochondrial issues and stuff like that we usually have as human markers, about 2 issues or whatever. I had all 5. He was like, you were in really, really bad shape. And if you remember, you look at the video, it became very famous because he had given Dana White 10.4 years to live.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I told him I didn't want to know. I said, that's God for him to do that. He make that decision. Don't come to me with how much time I got left. I don't want to know. Just tell me what it's going to take to get me right, get me better. And I've been on that mission ever since. And, he always reminds me, I never told you, but I can tell you now, you were worse than Dana.
Wow.
And he said, you were in really, really bad shape. And so ever since then, I work out 5 to 6 days a week minimum. I make sure I do my cardio at least 4 days, 5 days out of the week. I'm lifting 5 to 6 days out of the week. If it wasn't for my elbows hurting, I was doing like 250 push-ups a day.
Wow.
And I had to cut it back because I had inflamed my elbows. Cutting down the sugar, about 85% of the sugar intake. I cut that out. I exercise more. I cut back on the white bread, even though I love white bread, like sourdough.
White bread's delicious.
I love it.
Sourdough, also delicious.
But that cut back on the red meat, cut back on a lot of different things, but more importantly, I'm just active, exercising every day, supplements, peptides, vitamins, exercise, all of that stuff. It's just a lifestyle change. And so I think I was, the number was 29.8% body fat. I was 208 with no definition, 29.8% body fat. And last month, I've been eating like a pig over the last week or so because the dentist, my dental procedure and all of that stuff, I finally got through that so I could eat more. But prior to that, about a week ago, I was at 177
Wow.
at 8.8% body fat.
Congratulations.
You know, just-
That is amazing.
So it's like I just
It's
changed
so
my
hard
life
to
around.
do.
Yeah.
It's the discipline.
Well, you can't stop. You're not doing it to get to a point. It's a commitment to the change, period. It doesn't mean that you don't cheat, doesn't mean you don't have your snacks, doesn't mean you don't, you get your sugar or whatever. But the vast majority of your time should be spent doing what's right for your body. And a lot of times people do something to get there. No, you're making a commitment. This is the life that you want to lead. And because of that, I mean, I didn't look in the mirror. I wouldn't take my shirt off around people. I didn't want to do anything. I walk around my shirt off now. It doesn't bother me.
You're proud to
I
take-
know I'm in shape.
Yeah.
And so that's
Take it
that's-
off,
that's
Steven.
what it
No, I'm
is.
kidding.
We're gonna do that. Not today. You see me at General Hospital. So it's not that. But that's it. So I'm very happy. But it's a process, and it's never gonna stop. I'm gonna live this way the rest of my life.
How do you get that shift in mindset? It's
Well, for me, it's helpful because of people like yourself and so many others associated with the WWE, people associated with the UFC, the professional athletes, NBA, NFL, baseball, hockey, whomever. One of the things that I'm very, very blessed and fortunate to have is my career because I'm around some of the greatest human beings as athletes who have ever lived. The shape that they're in, the discipline they exercise. It's like, when I get into stuff with athletes and stuff like that, it might be what you do, but I don't talk about who you are.
Right.
Unless it's in a very positive way because I'm really telling everybody, you're really not understanding. I'm getting on you about this, but I admire you because I wasn't that good. And the things that you all do is one thing to be great. It's another thing to evaluate the reasons of a greatness. When I think about a LeBron James, for example, I think about him, people think about him being one of the greatest players to have ever lived. I think about the fact that he's clearly one of the greatest conditioned athletes who has ever lived. He's always in shape. There's a difference between getting ready and staying ready.
Yep.
And LeBron James, Steph Curry, and great players like that are the dudes that stay ready. They don't get ready, they stay ready, which means at any given moment you can call on them and they can answer the call because they never let themselves go.
right.
And that, to me, is what elitism is all about. It's a lifestyle change, and it's making sure that you never drop off. Of course, that you take vacations.
Sure.
You take days off. There's those kind of things. But you don't fall off because you understand what it takes to be great. And I'm blessed that in covering sports, I repeatedly and religiously am connected to people who walk in greatness every day. And my colleagues, the Ryan Clarks of the world, who's a Super Bowl champion with the Steelers, Marcus Spears, who's an analyst, Jeff Saturday, who's a Hall of Fame center and stuff like that. The basketball players, the Kendrick Perkins of the world, the Jay Williams of the world, people like that, the people that I've been blessed to be associated with, they were looking at me, what you doing? What's up with that belly? What's up with that? You just gonna do that? The NBA players would look at me and be like, I see that. Allen Iverson walked up to me one time, what's up? What am I looking at? That's a belly right there. What you gonna do about that?
On air?
You know, not on air, but he would have if we were on air. But I opened myself up to being called, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And those guys like Floyd Money Mayweather, that's somebody who's I covered many of his fights. I couldn't come around Floyd after I just finished eating some fried chicken. He like,
Well,
what
Floyd didn't always eat the
what
best,
do?
you know.
You know what? He didn't always eat the best, but he was always shit. One time I was in Roscoe's in L.A. Floyd had his whole crew up in there. Everybody ordered the house. Floyd ordered a glass of water and sat there and watched everybody else eat. And he didn't because he was training for a fight.
Damn.
And he'd go out and he'd run his 5 to 10 miles every night and stuff like that.
Yeah, like
And he
midnight
was
or 2 in the morning, whenever it is.
In all my years of seeing him, I have never seen him out of shape. Ever. Not one time.
Agreed.
Ever.
But he did have pretty bad eating habits.
Yeah,
if you watched
because-
like 24 and
But
some
he
of the.
would say that, and I would say, why
And
are
you
you
still
doing
never
that?
saw it?
I would say that, why are you doing
Yeah,
that?
I
One
never
time he
really
ate
saw
McDonald's
it.
right in front of me, and he was like this. It's a cheat meal. You wasn't here the last 5 days when I didn't eat that. And he said, so 95% of my time is spent doing the right thing. If I did it 100% of the time, I wouldn't be happy.
Right. Well, and then he got a chef.
Yes.
And then he kind of learned how to eat properly, right?
That's right.
Because we're all learning constantly.
Shoot, that's my next step.
Yeah.
Hiring a chef.
That's good.
That's the next thing I'm
It
going to do.
makes it a lot easier, right?
Huh?
I would think it makes
Well, I'm just
it
saying,
easier.
I want a chef. Listen, my sister, for example, is a marvelous, sensational cook. But a chef, from a nutritional standpoint,
Yeah.
is going to make sure that the stuff in your fridge is what's supposed to be in your fridge. And I'm not going to have to worry about whether or not I'm inserting the proper nutrients in my body. So I'm excited because I'm 58 years old and I'm in the best shape of my life.
That's amazing.
And so for me, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm excited about that because it's ways to go. I'm at 170, last week, like I said, I was at 177 at about 8.8% body fat. My goal is to get up to 190 at no more than 10% body fat and stay there.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I love that. And it's so interesting, though, because you talked about COVID and how it changed your perspective because of your daughters.
Yeah.
Your daughter's reaction, both of them, to
Yeah.
how close you came.
Yeah.
Real near-death experience.
Well, when I first got COVID, I was actually with them. They were both with me at the house.
And your sister, too, right?
Yes, well, my sister came over because what happened is I wasn't feeling well.
Okay.
And with COVID out there at the time, even though the shutdowns hadn't taken place as of yet with the NBA and other sports,
Sure.
we knew that COVID would existed. And so I wasn't feeling well, and everybody's in a panic. If you got flu-like symptoms that you remember at
Yeah.
that particular moment in time, if you have flu-like symptoms, the first thing you thought about was COVID.
Sure.
Yeah.
First thing. And so I went and got one of them home tests or whatever it was, and it said I had COVID. So I had to call him, Mom, like, get him up out of here. Come get him. And then as they left, I began to deteriorate with each passing day. And they called me on FaceTime every day, and one day they looked at me and they said, Mom, you see him? They said, they said I looked like death. It was, my eyes looked black, I looked drawn out, and it was a nightmare. It really, really was, because again, what made it worse for me is that I had double pneumonia. So if you got your lungs and you got a little white spot, and they'll say that's a sign of pneumonia. Well, my entire lungs, it looked like clouds in the sky. It was covered in white. Couldn't breathe, waking up in the middle of the night as if I had jumped into a pool of water with my clothes on. That's how much I was sweating. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And so it was different for everybody because my sister smokes. And she got COVID on a Friday and she was fine that Tuesday. I got COVID and I couldn't shake it for 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
It was just that bad.
And you have said since that you wake up every day and you always live every day to make your mommy proud.
Right.
Right? But that you woke up with a renewed sense of life, that
Yes.
tomorrow is not a
Yeah.
given. Do you find that you still feel that way every day, or now that so much time has passed,
No.
has that
it-
started
it
to
hasn't-
slip?
It hasn't changed. I've been blessed and fortunate to have a level of success I could have never dreamed about. God has truly blessed me. But when I was in that hospital room and I had a nice contract, I was making good money, and I was in a room with somebody that wasn't nearly as successful as I was. Money didn't matter.
Right.
All that mattered was our health. We were in the same place. We were in the same condition, and it was pretty bad. And for me personally, I think that when you are committed to being successful in life, you have different nuggets of information and to utilize as motivation. For me, I took a picture of myself when I was in that kind of condition.
Wow.
And I carry that picture with me on my phone everywhere I go. And every morning I wake up, I look at that picture.
Wow.
And I look at that picture. I stood sideways, and I saw this skinny dude with this pot belly that was totally out of shape. And I was like, that was me. And I look at that anytime because I know that looking at that, I know I'm going to get up and go to the gym.
Right.
I did it this morning. I had my radio show to do. I had a commercial to shoot. I had you to come see. I got other commitments. And it would have been real easy to grab a bowl of Crunch Berries or Sugar Pops and sit in front of the TV and lounge for an hour and a half. I didn't do that. I looked at the picture. I took my protein drink and I went to the gym. And I stayed in the gym for an hour and a half. And it was like, that's my life.
We talk a lot about iconic stories on this show. And when it comes to sports entertainment or professional wrestling, no stories are bigger than the ones written by WWE legends. Superstars like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, trailblazers like Trish Stratus, and factions like the NWO and DX. Their legacies are unforgettable. And if you want to wear that history, you need the real deal. That's why you've got to check out WWE Shop and Fanatics. They have the ultimate lineup of official WWE Legends merchandise. We're talking classic graphic tees, premium vintage hoodies, and retro gear. Whether you're hitting a live show or just repping your favorite era on the street, Fanatics has you covered. Don't wait. Head over to WWEshop.com and Fanatics.com right now and grab your favorite Legends gear. Well, and you are one of the hardest working people in the world, but certainly in sports. Yeah. And that's one of the things that you talk a lot about in your book is, yes, the importance of hard work, but then at some point in your life, you have a life-altering experience. Sure. And how does that then affect how you look at work, how you define success?
Well, it's interesting because I don't care what it is you're doing. Like, for example, people don't realize talking takes energy. Doing research takes energy. Networking takes energy. All of these things come with it. Just think about it for a second. You could sit around and talk with somebody. And you could do a 2-hour radio show. And you're just talking. And when it finishes, you're like this. And you're a little tired. You understand? Because, your brain is working overtime. You're doing what you need to do. You got all of these things, all of these challenges. Well, the interesting part was when I was out of shape, I used to collapse when my show was over. I needed to lay down. I always had a headache. I needed to drink some water. I need to take some Tylenol. I need to do all of these different things. It's amazing what happens to you when you get yourself in some shape. And remember.
And in terms of your energy.
In terms of your energy. Like, you ready to roll. You ready to roll. You ready to keep on going. And so don't get me wrong, but it's also interesting because better health educates you about the things that you're doing to not be healthy. Like, for example, if you are not in shape, you might not get enough sleep, but you might think there's a myriad of things that contributed to your absence of health. When you're healthy, and then all of a sudden you wake up with a headache, yeah, damn, I only got 3 hours sleep last night. Yeah. Damn, I ate a bunch of sugar yesterday. I shouldn't have done that. Damn, I went out and I said I didn't do it. I didn't feel like, I've been behaving myself. Let me get a Hennessy and Coke. Let me get a drink, and instead of 1, I got 2. And then all of a sudden, you got this little headache, a little sinus or whatever. it's like those kind of things, suddenly you're educated. Your body is better positioned to tell you what specifically you've done wrong in the moment. Whereas when you weren't in shape, it could have been something you did a month ago, a week ago, last night, 10 minutes ago. It could have been anything. But when you get healthier, your body helps identify what it is that you're doing. So if you ate too much sugar, your body gonna tell you that. If you ate too much red meat, your body gonna tell you that. If you drank enough water, your body's gonna tell you that, because boom, all of a sudden you don't have those headaches. And it's like, all right, I thought I was dehydrated because of a lack of water. And then you learn, no, it's not a lack of water, it's a lack of sodium. If you got sodium in your water, all of a sudden that's healthier, because it eradicates the headaches and the tension in your head. I just had a dental procedure. Guys, Dr. Gandhi's a specialist. 80% of viruses, diseases, fungi, all of this other stuff emanates from the mouth. Because the mouth is always open. You're talking, you're chewing, you're drinking, whatever. And so they examined me and said, there's something wrong. And it looks like it's emanating from your mouth. There was something wrong with my tooth. I had these toothaches. This is after I got healthy. Why am I having these problems? They go up in there and they said, years ago when they would give us root canals, they always put titanium screws up in there. Well, that's screws, that's metal.
Right.
Metal in your gums contaminates the gum. If it contaminates the gum, it contaminates your blood. Because it's in your mouth, it's leaking into your organs. And all of a sudden, I had all of these damn problems.
Yeah, I have mercury fillings
Right,
they had
exactly.
to take out. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you know, you could go to the dentist for something as simple as a teeth cleaning, and your gums and all of this stuff is bleeding because you're inflamed. You're inflamed because nobody ever looked deeper. All of a sudden, so over the last 10 months, everybody was listening to my radio show. They're like, what's wrong with him? You know, why is he sniffling? Why is he always talking about there's a dental issue? Because over the last 10 months, I had to undo 6 root canals, redo them over, change the metal to ceramic so that it's not metal and I'm not electrocuting myself in my mouth. I had to clean up 2 wisdom teeth areas and have implants inserted just to restore my health. And it's like a 10-month process. And they said now I have the mouth of a 10-year-old who brushes their teeth 3 times a day.
Damn.
So it's not gonna be stuff leaking into my mouth. It's cut down on the inflammation. This kind of stuff isn't leaking into my organs and contaminating me. Suddenly I don't feel as sick and stuff like that. All of those things are things I would have never paid attention to had I not gotten healthy. But because I got healthy, I said, I'm not supposed to feel like this because my health has improved so much. Why am I still feeling this way? Why am I not able to sleep? Why do I need sleep medication to fall out? Stuff like that. And also, it's very important to understand this. When you're not healthy, you make other people unhealthy.
How so?
Because you got attitude. Think about it.
You're
If you got a
unhappy,
headache, you don't want to sit here talking to me. If you agitated and you just stomach ache, chest pains or whatever, you don't feel like being around people. When you're not healthy, there's a lot of things that get
You
in the
bring
way.
people down, you mean?
Because
your energy is going to
because
be
you
affected.
can't get up.
Yeah.
You can't get up and be at peak condition. So because you can't do it, it affects your mood, it affects your temperament, and that affects the people around you. And that's what you gotta look out for.
Well, and
So
I-
speaking about, other people around you and the importance, you talk about a lot, the importance of a team.
Yeah.
And before you found your professional team, somebody made a big impact on you, I think around 4th grade, somebody named
Yeah.
Pooley.
Yeah, my boy Pooley, well, that's one of my best friends.
So can you
Pooley
tell us a
loves
little
big
bit about
women.
Pooley?
Pooley loves big women. You could put Beyonce in front of Pooley. Pooley gonna be like, what am I supposed to do with that? Literally, because y'all ever saw the movie Norbit?
yeah.
And you remember Rasputia? That's Pooley.
Okay.
Pooley, if you ain't 250 Pooley's looking at you like, what am I supposed to do with that?
But so then in that
he
case,
loves big women.
the
loves
big
them.
women are not bringing him down.
Oh, they
Bringing
lifting him up. They lifting him up. You know, that's Pooley right there. And
Is
you know,
he the
Pooley,
only man to ever turn down Beyonce, though?
Huh?
He's got to be the only man to
I
ever
said he
turn.
would. He ain't never had the opportunity to.
Okay, just
I said
checking,
if you
checking.
put Beyonce in front of him, he look at her like she's too small. You know, I mean, he loves himself some big woman, but he was my guy. I mean, he's always been my guy. He's still here in the city, one of my best friends in the world, love him to death. And he just slapped the living hell out of me one day and slapped some sense into me and talked to me about doubting myself, worrying about what other folks think. Do you? You understand? Because you're going to be great. Stop being a punk ass. You understand? March forward. Be willing to accept challenges. He told me that at a very young age and always had my back. I never learned how to fight, really, because Pooley would always jump in and fight for me. The second somebody came in my face, Pooley would snuff them. You know, that's how he was. That's how he still is. I just got my own bodyguard, though, so I'm good.
And Pooley was a bus driver.
He is a bus driver.
Is a bus driver.
That's right.
And
And a mechanic. Auto
and-
mechanic.
And then at your mom's services, Pooley actually showed up for you unexpectedly
Yeah. He was driving the bus
with people on
with
it.
people on the bus and pulled up across the street from the funeral home just to come to the funeral, walk inside and to give me a hug. And I was like, there's customers there. You know what I'm saying? They'll be all right. They'll be all right. You know, so I made him get back on the bus, but that's my man. That's my guy.
I mean, that's a true friend.
Yeah, we've
right
known
there.
each other since 1 year old. 1 year old. I mean, some of my friends, and I guess that's why, you know, it's like I try to be, you know, decent as I possibly can be, but I don't have this insatiable need for new friends and, you know, acceptance from other people, whatever. Be decent. Be a God-fearing individual. Be as honest as you could possibly be. But don't let other people's, you know, love or lack thereof, affection or lack thereof or whatever, define who you are and control you. I got enough friends. It's nice to have new friends. Please don't get me wrong. Anytime you meet good, decent people, you should want to get to know them. You should want them to be people that you don't mind saying hello to, communicating with or whatever. But I don't need it. Between my childhood buddies and my college buddies, I'm good.
And your family.
And of course, always family.
Yeah.
But I got a boatload of love in my life. So I'm really, really
You are
good.
blessed.
I am very blessed.
And you were blessed to grow up with such an amazing mom.
Yes, she was the greatest, no doubt about it.
Some of the best lessons she taught you were about being true to yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you share one of those stories?
Well,
you know, when you
how about when I got fired from ESPN?
okay, I was gonna go there.
right
Go
there.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when I got fired from ESPN in 2009 over that contract dispute, you know, I had to go home, lick my wounds, because I loved my job, and you know.
And it was out of the blue for you.
Well, I didn't expect to get let go. I didn't expect to go from having 4 jobs to having none. And I knew that I've always done good work because I'm very, very committed to my craft. And so I thought it was politics that had derailed me. I felt railroaded. I felt shafted. And I was very, very hurt. And I went home. And, you know, but when I say I went home, I went to my mother's house where I grew up in Hollis, Queens. And she still had the bunk bed ready and my old room and all of that stuff. And I went and I laid in there and I didn't move. Other than having to go to the bathroom or getting something to eat, I didn't move for 2 days. And Mom finally came up to the room with breakfast, and my favorite from her was my bagels and my scrambled eggs and my hot tea. You know, I'm West Indian. My family's from the West Indies. So we like my hot tea, milk and honey and all. I just love it. And she came up and with a tray, and on the tray she had a handheld mirror on the tray. And I was like, what is this? And she was like, I left it there because I'm waiting for you to look at yourself. She said, it's real easy for you to blame everybody else for what happened, but what you do. She says, I've heard you talking about your bosses. I heard how you felt about them. I heard how you would complain about work every day. She said, I'm not saying you deserve to be fired. What I'm saying, however, is, would you want you working for you, that person, that you were? Would you want that, a kind of person like that working for you? You know the answer to that is no. So why were you that way? She says, I'm not saying your bosses were flawless, but they're your bosses, and you got a job to do. And you were too busy focused on disliking them than doing your job. And even though you still performed, you became a headache. And that's the real story in all of this. So what you gonna do about it? And it was the first time that I really, you know, in terms of that situation, that I really looked at myself and pointed the finger at myself. And it turned out to be the greatest thing that happened to me, because from that moment forward, I paid no attention to what was done to me. And instead, I paid attention to what I did to myself. And it was a big deal about accountability, because once that happened, I've never had that issue again. The first thing I do is I always look at me. And so when it doesn't matter what kind of conflict I get in or whatever, I'm never one to say that person is totally wrong and I did nothing wrong. I always recognize what I could have done wrong too. And that's why I can have a conversation with anybody, no matter what our differences are, because I recognize that I could have done better myself. And that's what I focus on, and that's what makes me confident as a person, my willingness to look at me.
And I think that's so admirable, because I think that accountability and ownership are one of the toughest lessons to learn. But you share so much in your book, Straight Shooter. If you haven't read it, it's awesome. And if you want to listen to it, you do it in your own voice, which I love also. But you talk about these lessons, these very vulnerable moments. And I want to just kind of take everybody on a little journey, because you sort of sum it up at the end, because you've had some big, of course, very public, things happen. Mm-hmm. And you said with, and I'm not providing a ton of context, but with the Ray Rice incident, you said you learned you were embittered and alert.
Right.
It's one of the first big things that really happened. And then with Aisha Curry, you said your eyes were open and you were grateful. And then the last big thing that happened in that sort of vein with Otani was you were educated and fulfilled.
Right.
And you said you learned how to let those who needed to be heard by your audience, and the importance of listening. Mm-hmm. I mean, that kind of growth is unusual, and I think it's one of the key reasons for your success and who you are. Mm-hmm. But those lessons are so hard to learn.
Right.
Can you share a little bit about how you do that, how you stay open, how you look yourself in the mirror?
So the Ray Rice situation, when he beat up his girlfriend, his then fiance, I go on the air and, I talk about I said a lot of things. First thing I said is that, number one, I've never hit a woman. I was raised by women. And I think that any man that puts his hand on a woman should be ashamed of himself, and he should be dealt with, okay? Preferably by other men who will show him or will remind him what it's like to be hit. Since you want to put your hands on a woman, let me remind you what it's going to be like. But in the process of explaining that, I also said, be careful not to provoke. And that created a huge, huge uproar, because there were people who had interpreted it as me saying that women bring it on themselves. And that's not what I meant. That's not what I said either. But I understood that if you are a woman, particularly one who has suffered from domestic violence, how you could interpret it that way. My thing was, I had 2 daughters. And so in having 2 daughters, 4 older sisters, 11 nieces, okay, 90% of my relatives are women. My attitude is, if you're around a no-good bastard who would put his hands on a woman, my attitude is do what you can to get out that situation in that moment until help arrives. And that's how I meant it to come across. It did not come across that way. And because it did not come across that way, Disney informed me of the need to apologize for that. And then even after I apologized, they reprimanded me, they suspended me, and that had never happened to me in my career. And so it was a devastating blow, because I know that my name has no business ever being associated with domestic violence. But in the same breath, when they start giving you the numbers and they talk about victims of domestic violence, and some of the trauma that they've experienced, et cetera, that's an education, because I didn't know that. And so who the hell am I to tell somebody how they're supposed to feel when they're experiencing something I never experienced?
Right.
And so that was a lesson. Aisha Curry, you know, when I sat up there and, you know, when she had gotten herself into a situation where there was attention drawn to her and her company as she was entering the arena in Cleveland for an NBA Finals game, you know, the attention that she drew, I was like, hey, you know, Savannah James, LeBron James' wife, first lady of the sport, never gets into any kind of situation, you know, never, because she understands that she's Mrs. Steph Curry, and that's how they're going to promote it. And when I said that, she spoke out and highlighted me comparing two black women and pitting them against one another. I did not believe I was doing that. I was like, wait a minute, we're all educated.
Because that wasn't your intent.
No, not at
Right,
all.
right.
I was just saying, like, listen. And what I should have said was, Hillary Rodham Clinton at the time was running for the presidency. You know what, Bill? You got to watch everything you say and do, because it's a reflection on her. Because that would have made my point better. Because I wasn't talking about a woman compared to a man. I was talking about whoever that person is in the eye of the storm. If you are an extension of them, you represent them and you have to guard them. But because I said it was her and I brought up Savannah James, it was taken that way. So that was an education in and of itself about watching what you say and how stuff can come across, and how women have these battles all the time of society trying to pit one against the other instead of owning what we do to contribute to the kind of difficult circumstances you all have to overcome. And my sisters were like, remember, I got 4 older sisters, and they were like, we know you. We know that ain't what you meant, but this is how it sounded.
Right.
And because of that, you know, say, we know you and we know that's not who you are. So correct it. And I said, done. It's not a problem. And then with the Shohei Ohtani thing, when I talked about, you know, him being a Major League Baseball player, and I knew he could speak English, but he didn't always do so. And sometimes he used an interpreter and stuff like that. When I spoke about it like that, there were people that were in an uproar, particularly the Asian community, because they talked about racial tropes that they've had to deal with, which I was completely unaware of. So the next day, when the whole stuff was in an uproar, I not only invited our Major League Baseball insider, Jeff Passan, on to literally go off and rake me a new one and tell me how ignorant I came across, but I also invited reporters from the Asian community to come on the show to educate me and our listeners about what it takes. Why? First Take has been the number one, because of y'all. First Take's been the number one morning show for 14 straight years. And if it wasn't for y'all love and support, and how you doing, buddy? If it wasn't for y'all love and support and what you do for me, the show wouldn't be as successful, and I wouldn't be as successful. So let me return the favor by making sure I use this as an opportunity to suck it up, take it. I put myself, me and my big mouth, put myself in this situation. Let's educate me and the rest of the world about what the Asian community feels is insulting and denigrating and whatever, so we can make sure none of us ever do it.
So we can all learn together.
And then we can all learn together. I know that as a black man, I don't go up to white folks, Hispanic folks, Asian folks, anybody else, and think that the second you do something, you're racist. I don't think like that. What I think is, you don't know better. So let me as a black man help you out and educate you about what we will find offensive. You understand? You as a white person, you as an Hispanic person, you might see black folks talking to one another that way. You can't do that with us. You can't do it. We're gonna take it differently, and we're gonna absorb it. So, you know, I've had white individuals come up to me and say, why can't I use the N-word? Because you ain't us. You can't use it against us. And when they argue with me about it, I tell them, I won't argue. I tell you what, I want you to go to any hood in America by your damn self and say that.
Let's see what happens.
And see what happens. I said, end of discussion, because you know you won't. Because you know you might not make it out of there. Which means you know that coming from you, it's offensive, so why do it?
Right.
You understand?
Why even ask?
So to me, the way that scenario that I pointed out is the same way I am. I don't intentionally offend any community. It's not just Hispanic, Asian, Native American, Jews, Catholics, whatever. Not just those communities. I don't offend the community of domestic violence victims. I don't offend the community of victims of various things. I'm sensitive to all of that because they experienced things I didn't. That's growth, and I think that's why ESPN has entrusted me, because they know I don't just do it for me. I do it for everybody, and I also do it for them, because I'm not just Stephen A. I'm Stephen A. of ESPN. I represent myself. I represent them. I represent my family. I represent my mother, God rest her soul. I represent everybody. So I try to do the right thing. Am I perfect with it? Hell no. But I always strive to be. And anybody that I've worked for or I've worked with, they know that I'm never intentionally offensive. I'm not a guy that says, I don't give a damn whether you're offended or not. This is what I'm going to say and do. I don't operate that way. I never have, and I never will.
You enjoy controversy and debate,
I enjoy
right?
debate, sure.
But you're never out to offend.
Never.
And there's a big difference.
There's a difference. There's a difference.
Can you explain the role that authenticity plays in that?
It has to, you see, authenticity, that's not just about being real and true with the words and the actions that you disseminate. It's also being open. It's being open enough to say, hey, I've endured these experiences. I've went through this. Here's what you need to know, and here's what you need to learn. Because I've been there. I'm 58. So, you know, the earliest part of my life is over. I'm on the closer side to 100 than I am, to 10 or whatever. I mean, it's like, and I get it. The point is that because of the experiences that I've had, a lot of times there are people getting offended when they're not realizing, no, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm trying to tell you this is what you've done so you don't do it again. And you don't fall prey to it. You don't fall victim to it. That's all I'm trying to do. Because in 10 minutes, people will move on. But when you hold on to it and you never address it, and you spend so much energy trying to wiggle your way out of a situation or get out of a situation or not confront it, you end up giving life to it as opposed to ending it and moving on. I don't give people the license to emotionally blackmail me. Oh, you know what? We're going to talk about this. You go right ahead. You do what you got to do. I'm going to be here. I'm going to still walk. You can attack me. You can try to take me down. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm a model of consistency. I keep coming. I'm not going backwards. I'm going forward. Now, we can get over it and move forward together, or I can move forward by my damn self. But I'm not coming back. I'm not going backwards. I didn't do what I've done. I didn't put in all the work that I've put in. I didn't accomplish what I've accomplished for myself, my family, and my loved ones to take steps back just because I want to be belligerent and petty. I'm not doing that. I'm just not.
Well,
Yeah. Right?
that's not your goal.
Never.
Are you ready to hold WWE history in the palm of your hand? Topps is bringing you closer to the action than ever before with WWE Topps Now, highlighting the biggest matches and milestones from WWE shows and PLEs throughout the year. Topps Now is enhancing the fan experience by connecting collectors to the superstars and spectacles that ignite their passion. Featuring stunning event-exclusive photography, each card is made for the moment. And for some lucky collectors, that moment could become the pull of a lifetime. Along with serial numbered parallels, some Topps Now releases offer a chance at rare short prints, superstar autographs, and even pieces of the mat, gear, or other items used during the featured match. So which moments will you collect? With each card only available for a limited time, you won't want to wait to begin your Topps Now journey. Be sure to subscribe to the WWE Topps Now mailing list on Topps.com and follow Topps on all social media platforms so you never miss a single moment. So what are your goals now? Because you've throughout your career, your goals have changed,
Yeah.
right? And you've talked about the importance of having a mission and taking action.
Right.
Never being complacent, never being
Yeah.
stagnant. You have to keep moving forward.
Right.
I mean, we already talked about, being on General Hospital, shredded, right? You've accomplished this.
Not totally shredded, but I'm getting it. Yeah.
You wanted to do late night at one point in
Yep.
time. You've started your own production company.
Yep.
You said there's no reason why you couldn't be, from a model standpoint, the
Right.
next Spike Lee or the next big, producer.
Yep.
There's been talks of presidential runs and things like that. So, in your mind right now, what is your mission?
Well, I love working for ESPN, that's true, but I just have a strong desire to be great. I mean,
And how do you define great?
I mean, to me, well, being number one comes with that. Honing your skills, perfecting them, and understanding that, and I often use this line, I am brilliant because I know I'm not. I steal from those who are. If I find you to be brilliant at something, I'm committed to learning. What is it that makes you so special? What's that ingredient? I had a great relationship with the late, great Kobe Bryant. We were very tight, and I love him and I miss him every day. And when we talk about my production company and stuff like that, I remember when I was hosting a show on ESPN2, quite frankly, back in 2005 to 2007. And I said to Kobe when he came on as a guest, I said, man, they calling me, they telling me I got the potential to be Oprah. And he said, F Oprah, Harpo. He said, it's insulting to call her Oprah. Harpo, she owns her own studio. She owns her content. She's producing additional content on top of the content she's creating on her own show. This is just the beginning for her. She's a powerhouse. I don't want to hear about you being a host. You Stephen A. I expect more from you. That's what he said to me. And I never forgot it. And it's those kind of thoughts that go through my mind when I think about it now. I got a little acting bug. I never thought I'd have it, but I'm going to take acting lessons. I'm thinking I've already been greenlit for a pilot for ABC. I've got other stuff in the can where I'm going to be working with, the producer and director for Michael, Antoine Fuqua, who's one of my dear friends. We're going to be doing the project together. And there's other things that I got coming down the pike as well. But overall, it starts and stops with me from the standpoint that I never want to leave sports. It's my bread and butter. It's what gets me up in the morning and gets me excited. I want to continue to do that. I don't believe that I have a successful YouTube platform because I've been so focused on linear television and radio throughout my career. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. Yes, I have over 1 million subscribers, but it should be more. It could be a lot better. But the issue is that there's certain things I'm allowed to do and I'm not allowed to do because of my contracts with ESPN and SiriusXM, and so contractually, you get handicapped to some degree. But I got a lot of stuff that I'm working on, and wait till you see what I'm coming with the next couple of years. I'm going to be swinging for the fences in the next couple of years because I'm not going to have some of the constraints that I have now. So all of those things play a role. The presidential candidate stuff was really not about me. It's about the state of our country and what I think politicians on Capitol Hill has done to divide us. Listen, we have differences. Blacks, whites, Jewish folks, Catholics folks, Muslims. We got differences in this country, no doubt about it. But I'm one of those people who strongly believes there's very little we can't overcome if we sit down and talk with one another. It's the politicians that have fed the division. Because in a binary system, we got to vote one way or the other. So if they scaring the living hell out of you on the right by saying you got people invading this country, you understand? And you're white America and you were once 90% of the population and now it's dipped to 57% and you're wondering what the hell is going on because you don't see an industry that's feeding you jobs and allowing you to flourish. Inflation, has really ravaged us to some degree. You got all of these kind of things going on. It's going to scare the living hell out of you as an American citizen. If you on the left, you're sitting there and you're hearing some of the rhetoric from MAGA and you're hearing folks talk as if they wish that we were back into the 1930s or 40s. That scares the living hell out of you. But we're not taking into account the fact that you had a president in the previous administration that opened the borders and let 12 to 15 million people in. And so as a result of that, when you have those kind of issues, you can understand from both sides of the aisle while a level of discomfort exists. My point is, we don't want to hear that from you politicians. We sent you up there to do a job. Work across the aisle, work it out. Yeah. Don't just be spewing venom at one another. And I tell this to people, especially from my community, all the time. You can't look, for example, if you are black and you are talking about white America, you can't say they ain't worth a damn, I hate them, they're racist and all of this other stuff. Oh, but can you give me a job? Doesn't work that way with anybody. If you white, you can't sit up there and say, these black folks are a waste of time, they're horrible, they're this, they're that, bump them, and then say, why can't we get along? No, you can't, it doesn't work that way. You know, you gotta be willing to talk with one another, recognize that differences exist, but that there's nothing that can't be overcome if you're open-minded when you communicate with each other, and that's very, very important. Why is open-mindedness so important? Because you're not walking into a discussion with a closed mind, thinking that under no circumstances can you be corrected. You have to always leave yourself open to the fact that the other side might have a better idea than you. It doesn't change you and who you are. It just means that you recognize, yo, that particular idea about that particular subject, their idea might have been better than the idea that I have. And because we saw politicians that weren't doing that, I got disgusted. And then with the Democratic side, which I am, you know, I'm an independent, but if I had to run, it would be as a Democrat. I'm looking at, you got the Democratic Socialist of America, and you have the moderate traditional Democrats. Well, that's a house divided. Mm-hmm. In our system, that's a house divided. That's not going to win you an election because the GOP ain't divided at the polls. They're showing up unified. If you're going to compete against them, you have to be unified. And I said, none of y'all are bringing people together. Bump it. I'll do it. And I said that. And the world took off. They had me on Situation Room, World News Tonight, Meet the I mean, everybody's calling. I'm like, good Lord. I'm like, look, I like my life. I ain't giving up my money, you know, because according to FCC rules, equal time rules, by virtue of what I do for a living, meaning being on camera, in front of the camera and the microphone, if I were to run for office, I would instantly be taken off the air because I'm not allowed on the air, which means I'd have to give up my contract.
Because you have undue influence, supposedly?
That's what they're saying. Anybody, right? So I'd have to give up my job, which means giving up my money. I'm not giving up my money. I worked very hard over the last quarter century plus to earn what I have. I'm not giving that up to run for office. But I will admit, if there was a way that I could be on the debate stage to go against these politicians that I believe has ravaged our country, and I didn't have to lose my job, I would announce to the world I'm running, just to beat them. Because I'm like, I think that they're a disaster. I'm not talking about policies.
Sure.
I'm talking about behavior.
How divided
I'm talking
it is.
about dividing people on purpose. I'm talking about not taking into consideration
no compromise.
About bringing the country together and understanding. I think the most important thing to say to young people that you need to learn, everybody doesn't get everything they want. I don't give a damn who it is. There's nobody that loves you, for example, more than your parents, your grandparents, your aunties, your uncles, and people like that. There is no way on earth they tell you yes every time. Sometimes you hear no. Sometimes you hear you can't. Sometimes you hear you got to do your homework. Sometimes you hear you can't go outside and play. Sometimes you hear you're grounded because you were acting up and stuff like that. That's the real world. And these politicians try to convince you that if you hear no, they can't tell you no. They got to act like they're telling you yes to everything, that they're going to give you everything that you want. And they never do, and they never will. They just tell you what you want to hear to get themselves empowered in office. I'm not that guy. I'm a real one. I'm going to tell you, no, you ain't having that.
But yet
it's
you couldn't run as an independent because...
I can't. Well, the independent, the money's in the parties.
Right.
So because the money's in the parties, the money that
So
they
then
throw
you're
behind you-
beholden. It's
that-
like the whole system
Exactly.
is just
and I'm not
upside
gonna be
down.
beholden. So if they come to me, if they want me, they got to come to me. And if they come to me, they got to come to me with a plan that enables me to keep my money while I can do it. They come to me with that, I'm all ears, but I ain't giving up my money.
But so what role does media have to play?
I think media plays a very important role, a very pivotal role, because the media has to learn to be better objectively. You don't have a right as media members to take a side on just in general.
Right.
Like, you might agree, the Republicans might have a point with immigration, but have no point with the economy, have no point with safety in the streets, have no point with a bevy of other issues. The Democrats might have a good point with certain issues, but not others. You got to be open to that, open-minded, and really, really dig into what works and what doesn't work for the country.
The way it was
can't
supposed to be set up.
That's the way it was supposed to be. You can't be, well, you know, I had somebody, I hung up on him. He said to me, every Republican is racist. I said goodbye. And here's why I said that to him. You might feel that way about our present administration, but you're talking about the 77 million people that voted for him. Well, how about somebody that voted for him because they just thought he would be better for the economy? What about somebody who voted for him because they thought, well, he's pro-life and they're pro-life instead of pro-choice? I'm pro-choice. But I'm pro-choice because I don't believe in telling a woman what to do with her body. Period. It's just that simple. I was raised by women. I ain't telling a woman what to do with her body. That makes me pro-choice. There's a bunch of things that I have a problem with on both sides of the aisle. But the point is, you can't castigate people like that. Because I don't want one black dude messing up and folks are thinking all black dudes are like that. That's one of the issues that I have with when they talk about black fathers. Most black fathers I know are the most loving, dedicated, giving men you will ever meet in your life. But society has folks believing we don't love our children. That couldn't be further from the truth. It's a lie. But they'll tell you that stuff. They'll tell you, well, the system shows it with numbers, but they didn't tell you what the system did to get in the way of men generating numbers so they could generate income so they could take care of their families. And how the system got in the way of it. They don't tell you a lot of this stuff. And I'm in a position where I don't have that problem. So I can say this kind of stuff, all right? And there's a lot of men get bad raps. There's a lot of God-fearing women out here that do great, great things in every community in this country. And you have men on Capitol Hill saying one thing for lip service and dismissing them when it really, really counts. But we out here in the trenches. And I remember one time one politician said something. He came on News Nation, and boy, did he make a mistake saying, he said to me, what would you know? Like, how would you know how the people are feeling? I said, you had a rally where about 20 people showed up. I show up in arenas every day with 20,000 people in it.
You're listening.
In football season, 60,000 people in it. I walk the streets of America. I'm in front of more people than you. What are you talking about? But so it's like, watch your mouth. And you know, you look at these folks and I'm like, I'm not an aficionado on the issues. I'm far from an expert. What I try to do as a media member is know enough to provoke conversation and steer you towards people who do know so you can listen to them talk about the issues and they can educate you. So when people try to come at me and say, what the hell does he know? Please, you got this wrong. I say, what are you talking about? I never said I knew. I said, based on the information that's out there, this is how I feel. But go here, go here, go here, go there to learn even more because they know more than me on both sides of the aisle so you can hear different perspectives and then deduce what conclusion you want to reach.
That's right.
But most importantly, you have to be about the business of striving for righteousness, striving for what's fair to the vast majority and not the select few. And unfortunately, we have politicians on Capitol Hill with lobbyists in their pockets, with their hands in lobbyists' pockets every single day that are doing what it takes to maintain power instead of doing their job. And to me, if those people showed up on a stage against me for a debate. I think that if I showed up on a debate stage, I think 100 million people would be in front of their television
Oh,
sets
I
to see
agree with that wholeheartedly.
And I can
100%.
tell you right now, I will have never been more ready for anything in my life than I would be for that debate that night. More than any sports debate or anything that I've ever done in my life. If somebody said to me, you could show up on that debate stage and debate against these dudes that I believe have really severed our country, I cannot tell you how desperately I would be ready for that moment.
And you talked about listening to the smartest people in the room, given whatever their particular expertise
Right.
is. So I know that one person you truly admire, and I want to just ask this, is the nature boy, Ric Flair. So what are the top 3 takeaways, the best lessons that you ever learned from listening to Ric Flair, especially in terms of how to cut a promo and how that then parlays?
Passion, so much starts with that. Don't tell me that you've ever encountered anybody with more passion for their job than Ric Flair. Woo! I mean, this brother, I mean, he was something special. I mean, listen, he's still alive, still kicking, but Ric Flair, I mean, he's the reason. Don't get me wrong, I love what I'm seeing from the WWE. I'm a fan. You got some superstars in the sport and stuff like that. But I've often said to the Nick Khans of the world, the Triple H's of the world, my man, you know how much I love that brother. That's my guy. That's my guy. I've often said, and he's such an incredible talent evaluator and all of that, the one thing that to me they haven't found, excuse my language, is a shit talker, the quality of Ric Flair. I mean, that's the one thing but there has been no equal. There has been no successor to that. No one. And I mean no one. This man is just next level. I mean, he just is. And I mean, this dude, Ric Flair was something special. And I mean, Hulk Hogan had his thing. Ultimate Warrior had his thing. Randy Macho Man said, oh, yeah, he had his thing. I mean, a whole bunch of people. And I go back to the days of NWA when it was the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. It was Magnum TA. It was the Road Warriors, the Four Horsemen with Arn Anderson and the crew. I loved all of them, But Ric Flair stood in front of the crowd because when he got in front of a microphone, when you saw him, you could see the other wrestlers, you could see the other fighters there. You didn't want to hear from anybody else once you saw Ric Flair. Because you're like, would y'all move out the way? Let me hear what he has to say. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was just phenomenal. And so it was the passion, obvious belief in himself, because obviously as a wrestler, he was undersized compared to most of the wrestlers he went against. So there was this unwavering belief in himself, a passion that rivaled it. And was there a greater master at the mind games? Was there anybody that could get you to just despise them so much and get off your game because
I mean, I was kind of hated. I'm just saying.
No, you were, but Ric Flair was something special. Ric Flair. I mean, it's unbelievable. Listen, you can't stand Ric Flair's children because of Ric Flair. You know what I'm saying?
Charlotte's winning him over, right?
Winning. But I'm just saying, she has an uphill climb because the nature boy. I mean, that's a lot to live up to. And, listen, that passion, the eye for entertainment, the mind games, all of that separated Ric Flair. And, he and I, we communicate from time to time. I love him to death. And, he just calls me the ultimate entertainer. And I'm like, please, stop lying. I'm talking to the ultimate entertainer. Nobody was better than the nature boy.
Amen. Well, I think this is a great place for us to end this interview. And Stephen, I'm just so grateful that you would take the time out of your day. You guys don't even know the day that he had and how many things he had to do. And he was determined to be here for you guys today. He wasn't going to miss this. So thank you for staying late. Thank you for coming late.
Thank you.
So grateful for you in so many different aspects.
My pleasure. Anything for you.
And I hope to see you on that debate stage.
I do too.
I hope so too. I doubt it.
Let's go.
But I hope so.
In some form or fashion.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.